Okay, so today it's Tuesday, September 9th. Welcome, Freedom Team, and all the guests. If you aren't a member of the Freedom Team, welcome, welcome, welcome. As always, we have an action-packed Tuesday training for you. Today we have none other than Sean Corbett. Sean is a rock star. Sean, I think you just told me you're the seven-time icon coming up.
Shortly, yeah.
Yeah, Sean. Cool. Sean has closed over 500 transactions. He has done over 300 million in volume. He is one of the top agents in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And Sean is going to teach you something today that is very attractive to me because Sean's going to teach you how to generate business without spending any money. So
hmm
if you are wondering, well, how does he do it? He's going to show you. If you're like a lot of us and you sit here and you go, golly, I get inundated with all the stuff all the time of spending money here and there and everywhere. Sean's going to show you how he generates a lot of business and doesn't spend any money to do it. So, without further ado, Sean, I'm just going to turn it over to you and let you take it away, my friend.
I love it. Thank you so much, Andy. I appreciate you. And you do understand growing your business without spending money. I know you do your YouTube stuff, and you can do 95% of YouTube without spending money. I mean, you don't even have to spend any at all, but I think it's a fantastic way to grow your business. I am not going to talk about YouTube today. It is not a way I grew my business. I've been doing this for about 18 years. And I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about my background, where I come from, and why I approach it the way I do. And it's a topic I've taught a lot of different times. There's a lot of ways that we can build our business without spending money. I'm going to give you about three or four specific kind of categories, and I'm going to work through them. I do like to ask questions. I like to get interaction. We're all selling real estate. We've all done a lot of the things that I'm talking about. I'm just going to put it in practice and show you how you can actually make it a part of your business going forward. So that's going to be what I want to really focus on. I'm going to share my screen so I can kind of kick us off here. So let's talk a little bit about where I'm coming from and my approach to real estate. Most of you in your market, you probably have real producers. I know I'm talking on a national call. I was actually Jeff Morrell was a front cover of Real Producers for his magazine in his area. So I actually was on it just a few months back for North Fort Worth. Really good opportunity. It was really fun to be able to do the photo shoot. I took mainly all family photos because that's what's most important, to me. It's not just about selling houses, but it's connecting with your audience. I've got four kids, 4, 6, 9, and 11. I just had my boy turn 11 last week, and he has been very special for us. We actually adopted our firstborn, because we went years without having children, and we ended up deciding between IVF and adoption. We decided the adoption route made more sense for our family, so we adopted Alex right out of the hospital. And then after that, 3 years later, we get pregnant, right? I mean, that's how it works sometimes. And then we got pregnant with Annalise, and then we got a COVID baby. We got pregnant with Allison, and Allison is now 4, turning 5 in January. So she's our COVID baby. You spend a lot of time at home, you end up with babies sometimes. So that's the three. And then my brother had a daughter who's now 9. We ended up taking conservatorship for her because he's currently homeless, unfortunately. So now we have 4 that live with us. So that's our family lifestyle. So it's really important for me to build a sphere of influence as a part of my business, because I don't have weekends and evenings very often. So I need to really be particular about who I choose to work with. Okay. And a lot of this has to relate to sphere of influence. And I'm going to talk about that later. Last year, I was number 43 in transactions for all of EXP. There's about 85,000 agents. That's 2024. So I currently have the podcast that I'm running, Real Estate Success DFW, and then I created a community on school, Real Estate Success DFW Community on School. I do call it DFW. I do help people in other areas, but I really hyper focused my region because I want community. That's one of the things that's a challenge for cloud-based operations. It is our future. And I know most of you are probably EXP on the call. The future has to be cloud-based, but the problem with cloud-based is it does create a challenge for community unless you're intentional. So I became ultra intentional. I created my podcast, and then I created my Facebook group, and then I started doing regular ongoing trainings at my office here in Flower Mound, Texas. Currently top 0.5% of all real estate agents, over 300 million, over 500 transactions. I'm sure that's a lot more. I put that together a few years ago. And 95% of my closings are sphere of influence. I would think everybody on this call would rather work with people they know, like, and trust. And that's really where we want to focus and get to. How do we get to that group? A couple unique things about my approach to real estate is I never joined a brokerage that taught me how to sell real estate. Okay. I worked with a guy that owned a home building company, and he taught me about contracts. That's how I learned about real estate. And he taught me exclusively about contracts, detailed every line, every term, what it does. And I've used that as a leveraged experience to allow me to really win in my business. But you still have to create opportunities. Just because you're good at contracts and there's no opportunities, that doesn't give you much value. So I didn't have a broker. I didn't have a system. And I just kind of worked through and started selling houses to friends and family. Fortunately, I had a full-time corporate job at the time, so I didn't have to live on it. And I didn't have any online presence. I had a website. I think that was about the only thing I ended up setting up. And I didn't even really build my sphere of influence at the time. It was never even something I thought about until about 4 years ago. Okay. Y'all remember COVID? It was explosive. Everybody sold tons of houses. I think during COVID, I think I got up to 120, 25 houses one year, about 38 million. And it was a great year for me. And then the year after, I lost half the business. And then the year after, I lost another 25%. And I realized that I had people that knew, like, and trusted me that weren't calling me. And I realized that I wasn't staying top of mind for that audience. Okay. And that's what the sphere of influence, we all go to trainings and we all hear how to build our sphere of influence through AI, through the CRM cold market systems, through, open houses, all these different things that we can do to build our sphere of influence, which are great ideas, but nobody's managing their sphere of influence. You actually have to stay engaged and talk to your people over time consistently in order to be top of mind for your audience. So that's usually the component that everybody's always missing. Anyone here on the call had someone they know, like, and trust that didn't call them for real estate? And you are welcome to unmute. I'll try to give some breaks in there because I'll just talk and talk and talk. Anyone have a good story or experience about having someone, and it could be a family member. Those are pretty often that happens. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that means. But, a close friend, a relative, or maybe a neighbor, and they didn't call you. Anyone have an experience?
I'm sure. I'm happy to speak up. Neighbors, and it's one of those things where I'm the president of our HOA. I know all the neighbors very well. They know, like, and trust me, but they didn't buy with me because I came in after they were already here. So they went with somebody that they had purchased with or sold with before. And I think also sometimes people are afraid of ruining a relationship because if they go with you as their realtor, they're concerned, like, what if our friendship falls apart because of that?
That's true. Thank you, Amy. And I mean, everybody knows Amy, right? Why wouldn't they think about her when they're going to buy or sell a house? And we all can relate to that. I same thing with me. I wasn't, on my HOA president or anything like that, but my next door neighbor, I coached them to get because I do a lot of investment properties. I coached them to get a HELOC on their house and use that money to invest from their house that's already invested in their house. We're going to reinvest it into another house so it stays in real estate. And they went out and got a large loan. And sometime after they got approved for their loan, they decided his mom was getting divorced and that she was going to have to live with them. So their family life changed. And they decided they couldn't live in that house anymore. So they were going to rent it out and go buy something else. They go out and do open houses and sign a buyer rep on the spot with somebody else. And so I talked with them. I was like, how in the world, what do you think I do for a living? And they said, well, I thought you work with investors. And I said, I do, but I sell houses too. And I realized that I was not top of mind to them in the prospect of helping people buy and sell homes. I'll talk one other thing about Amy's comment. There are people that I call it the law of familiarity. And some of you may know that term. It's easy when you first start in real estate. Your family wants to help you. They want to give you your first couple deals. But when you're selling real estate 3, 4, 5 years down the road, it's hard sometimes to get family to work with you at that point. And there is relationship challenges, right? I don't want to hurt my relationship and things like that. So those are definitely important considerations. But sometimes you're too close to people, and it's better that you don't work with them in those certain circumstances. Sometimes there's always that opportunity. We just don't take it personal. You must grow beyond the people closest to you. And I point out my in-laws, my wife's sister, they bought and sold 8 houses and have never called me on any of them. Should I take it personal? I used to, because they call me when it's time to negotiate their property taxes. Oh, you're the expert. Help us with our property taxes. But they won't call me when it's time to buy and sell a house, and I used to take that personal. But I just realized, your family, you're never going to survive on your family. You got to survive on people that are not in your family in order to build your business. There just isn't enough in your family to support you. So when I talked about, I wasn't in a broker before, I never learned how to make the FSBO calls, right? The expired listing calls. I never did any of those things. I don't have cold call systems. I don't have door knocking, no postcard campaigns, no FSBOs, no expired listings, no pay for leads program. I have done some of these, but I've only done it for my team, not for me. So my business is exclusively built on building up my sphere and staying intentional and in front of them. Nothing against these. I know plenty of success stories, but the problem I find with getting into some of this space here is, one, it's not all that duplicatable. And two, you get about 10 years of doing this, right? You get kind of burned out. Like if you're spending 3 hours every day making FSBO calls, I don't know how sustainable that is. And I just decided that's not something I wanted to do, something that was not only duplicatable, but something that's sustainable. We can all do it, and we can do it indefinitely. I can work well past retirement doing this because I do, referrals, and I can have conversations with people because I've got, the experience selling real estate. I can have an intelligent conversation about it well past retirement. It's funny. Have you ever been to a realtor retirement party? Yeah. We don't retire in this business anyway, so I'm probably preaching to the choir. Most of you will probably sell as long as you can walk. But it's kind of a funny thing about, that. And I also say no CRM needed. So I actually don't utilize a CRM. I know that's probably alien to a lot of you as well. That's a touchy subject because most people are attached to their CRM. My view is if I'm still chasing and converting cold leads that have low probability, I'm putting a lot of energy and time and space that I would rather put it into people I know, like, and trust. I don't have a listing presentation. I don't have a buyer presentation. This is just something that I built. I'm telling you it's possible. Okay. I want to kind of break through some of those thoughts. One of the things that I'll talk is some of the myths that we have with broker agent relationships. I'm going to get to that in just a moment. My whole purpose here is all tips will point to an effective sphere of influence. Okay. We're not going to rely on one source for all of our opportunities. You can become really good at open houses. I've been to Brent Gove's training on open houses. Phenomenal. He looks at it as a real job, not a part-time job. Like, you go all in, get your client list of buyers, and then, turn that into a future opportunity of buyer sales. And I totally respect it. And I'm okay, if you do want some of the, FSBO calls and stuff like that, but make that a part of your business. The ultimate goal is to collect and build your primary and secondary sphere of influence touch system as much as you possibly can, because that's going to be your gateway and your lifeblood for your future business. And every successful real estate book all referred to the exact same thing. Anyone read The Millionaire Agent by Gary Keller? I almost feel like in some ways, we have a lot to owe Gary Keller. I remember going to one of my early EXP cons, and Glenn was talking about Gary. He said, everyone in this room owes a lot to what he created and set up. And he respects that about Gary Keller. Obviously, it didn't work long term for him there, but But he did respect a lot of what he did. And one of the things he talks about in the book is he says, one, you've got to focus on sales and listings. That's more effective use of your time. I think we have all heard that before. And the second thing that I pick up out of there is how to effectively stay in front of your sphere. And I think he wrote that book like 20 years ago. And I think he said something like 33 touches a year or something along that line. I think it's more today because of technology and everybody's getting inundated with stuff. But that was a really good lesson that I took away. And all of us should be focused on building a sphere business, not a cold market business. But the thing about, well, I'm going to talk about CRM in a little bit. I don't want to get ahead of myself. I'm going to add my inside tips. There's some specific things I'm going to give you that's going to help you in that particular space that we're talking about. And just so you have it in your mind, every single connection we make, we need to make sure we get, besides their name, a cell phone and an email. You need to get that email address. That email address is almost more important than anything else you can take from them. I would even say it's more important than their name and cell phone. Okay, because the email address is a easy touch-based system that allows us to continuously stay in front of them through effective, proper marketing. That's really good and beneficial to the end user. We need to add to our database every day. Okay, if I get time, I'll show you my Contact Plus system. That's where I track all of my people that I put in my system. And you'll see I have people being added almost every single day that I have conversations. Okay, I live it and breathe it. It's important to me that I track and stay in front of everyone that I have a conversation with, and I give them some value every time we have conversations. We want to move to 100% sphere of influence business. Don't build your castle in someone else's land. And this has to do with, being even in teams and things like that. You owe your future success being in the group or team. If you put all of it in their hands, then you're not effectively owning your future business. So always think about what our future is going to look like. I have something I've created that I've talked through. I call it the counterculture agent. This is really a challenge to the way brokers think about real estate. I'm going to say things and you're going to, I think, realize the truth of it. And some of them are a little overstated, but it's really meant to make kind of a punch. 20 years ago, brokers sold real estate. Brokers don't sell real estate anymore. Agents sell real estate. Okay, you guys can sell real estate anywhere. Many of you have parked your license with a cloud-based business because you want the leverage. You want to maximize your opportunity and growth. But really realize, and I'll tell you how you know this is true. If you worked for a brick and mortar or worked for another brokerage and then you move, do those clients turn around and call that broker? They don't. The client is yours. Okay? That's really important. We've really flipped the entire model. Anytime we can focus on agents first, we're on the right track and the right model. Your next broker will not fix your lack of productivity. That's a big one, right? People leave because, there's a shinier object over there. I'll sell more houses. It's more my style. They're going to give me opportunities. They all promise leads. They all promise opportunities. It's you. They're not going to grow your sphere of influence. That's you. And your sphere of influence is your business. That is your relationships. That is your future. You know your future and success by your contacts in your database, right? I think I'm saying it a little weird, but that's kind of the thinking of it, right? Your database tells you your future. The internet broke the brick and mortar business. Okay, it broke the brick and mortar, agent model that we had 20 years ago, and it's because it put information in the hands of the buyers and sellers. Once it did that, brokers don't own everything anymore. They don't control it. It's now up to agents to, have the conversations with the buyers and sellers and explain to them how the nuances and things work within a transaction. I'll go back to the CRM I talked about. You don't need a CRM to build your business. And the main reason why I say this is because CRMs are designed to have cold conversions. If you never had cold conversions, then you don't need. Okay, so we use CRMs until we get someone hot enough that wants to go look at a house, and then you don't need your CRM anymore. Everyone understand that prospect? Like, as soon as they start interacting with you, take them out of there. I want to talk to them. I want to stay in front of them. I want to send them, houses. I don't need my CRM to do that. That's the only thing it does. But what if you always started at that baseline where people were warm to you and you never had to have a cold conversion to get there? That's the reason why I don't value the CRMs. And I don't want to have to prove myself or convince somebody that I don't have a relationship with. That's not a space that I want to work in. Even if I'm good at it, I just find it easier and more duplicatable to teach and train agents. Let's work with people that are in the warm market, and we're going to stay in front of them. Brokers in general don't know how to solve real estate problems. I figured this out when I was a broker, probably about 8 years ago. I ran my own brokerage for about 10 years, and I was selling houses, and I sold a lot of houses at the time, and my agents were selling houses. Unfortunately, you realize when you're less than 30 or 40 agents, you've got to produce in order to keep the business open. So I had to sell a lot of houses, but I knew how to answer and solve real estate problems. I find brokers today generally at a lot of these places, they don't know how to solve real estate problems, and they're not available, right? And it's mainly because they've had to lean their system so bad that they can't be available enough to support the agents. That's something that a lot of people don't understand or believe. They think the broker is still going to solve real estate problems for them, and they're not. Any thoughts on that or comments about my counterculture agent? Usually I get people, oh man, I got to have my CRM. I can't live, or, any feedback?
Of course. Hey, Sean, good morning.
How are you, Jim?
I'm doing great, man. Yeah, I'm over here in South Fort Worth. And yeah, I'm just curious because, every time I'm in a kind of a quandary about, having a CRM about follow-up and keeping in front of people, staying top of mind, sending the monthly reports, whatever, so that you do stay in touch, birthday messages, whatever. What do you do to stay in touch with folks if you're not using the CRM? What's your methodology for that?
Great question, Jim. That's usually the first thing is how do I stay in front of them and have the proper touch systems? I have about 30 or so touches built into my automated system already. Okay. And I'll show you the core of that. All the other ones is going to have to be intentional calls, texts. And I'm not a big birthday guy in general. Okay. I don't send out letters for birthdays and stuff like that. I feel like that's a little overplayed. But I do annual gifts for our home anniversary because that's our relationship. So I have a default system that sends out what they like and things that they're excited about, and I'll share what that is later. But that automatically takes care of that. I have inviting them to opportunities or fun things. There's texts and then there's phone calls, and you have to. That's the only thing you got to stay in front of and track because I'm going to send out a newsletter. I'm going to send out HomeBot, which I'll show you what that is. I'm going to do EvaBot, which is my gift giving. I'm going to do all these automated things that are going to be built in. And then I'm going to get pretty close to my number. My target number is 40 touches a year. Okay. That's my target.
Cool.
And we're going to get into that as well. It's a great question. And I know that's some of the pushback, but here's the other thing. This is really, really important. You guys want to have like 10,000 freaking people in a CRM. I only need about 50 on my primary line of touching 40 times a year. And I'll get way more business than I will if I had 10,000 people I'm dripping every single day. Okay. Relationships really strengthen that connection. It changes everything. Sean, did you have something? You were on mic for a second.
I was just going to say I've heard a lot of good news from EXP agents when they do reach out to the brokers, pardon me, that they sometimes are blown away on how our brokers do seem to help more so than where they came from.
Yeah, it's a good point. I have 2 or 3 brokers on my phone all the time, and I don't call for broker help. I call for other support. Like I do a lot of these community events, and I want them to help spread the word. And they come to my community events. The brokers do. Some of them do in our area. So there's definitely value add. And all the brokers I know in Texas, they have real estate experience. I mean, they do. You can't come in here not selling real estate, think you're going to be a broker. Probably about 3 years ago, I actually applied to be a broker for Texas, and then I realized that I would cut my income by like 75%. And I was like, well, I got 4 kids to feed. I don't know if that's going to be my target. And they're going to own your time because it's still a lot of responsibility. So it wasn't a good fit for me. But thank you for that question, Jim. I love it. All right. So these are the things we all need to have. I'm going to probably run through a couple of these pretty fast because I don't want to spend too much time on some of the more obvious. Every one of you needs to have a Google business page. Okay. It can be your name. And it needs to be registered. If you have an executive suite office or something like that, even better, is what I have. I've got an executive suite. It's its own address. It's in Flower Mound, 6 minutes from my house. And I use that as my my core, because the Google business page is where we're going to post reviews. I get more reviews and I post all of my reviews there. I don't use Zillow reviews. I don't do reviews on all these other third-party sites. I like Google business reviews because they type your number in or your name. You're going to come up on the Google business. It's going to show you reviews there. And it's the cleanest, most effective way to do it. And it's free. Okay. I hope everyone in here has a business page on Google. There's, I won't go into it, but Jeff spent some time on this. I know he's done trainings on it, how you can turn your Google business page into actual sales opportunities for people calling you. Really, really valuable tools there. Jeff's got several trainings. You can look back and see one of the ones he's done on that. Because he has testimonial. He closes houses off Google business page. We need to at least do one social media. Okay. We don't have to do all of them. Do the one you're most excited about. Maybe the one you use the most. I like Twitter. I'm sorry, X. Look at my old over here. I like X. I just don't use it regularly in my business. So I decided not to go on there and make use of it. I did not care for Instagram before, but I made it a part of my regular day. And I post on Instagram because it's super easy. You just do a video. It automatically loads to Facebook. You get double the benefit. And it reaches my audience really, really effective. And then all of you go back to the CRMs, right? CRMs do offer free websites. You just need to have a basic website. Okay. I remember when I was a broker, I spent quite a bit of money setting up a from scratch private guy, loaded into our MLS, everything from scratch. And I built a really sharp looking website. And you know how many houses that website sold me? 0. Guys, get off the website stuff. Your marketing brand on your website is not how, that's like old time now, but you got to have one. They still need to see you're legitimate, right? And then you need to set up a profile on Zillow. I think that's a minimum. I should have put realtor.com as well. You need to have a profile on both. They're both free. Definitely do that. Okay. LinkedIn is not a value add to me. It's a business to business opportunity. And I'll tell you the quirkiness of it. Like on my LinkedIn, and I've got a huge group of people on my LinkedIn. I've been adding people all the time, but I'm not looking for retail. I'm looking for agents. I'm trying to build my agent touch and community. So I'm kind of approaching it different. So I'm looking for business to business in that sense. And LinkedIn, I don't imagine you're going to find it easy to find buyers and sellers through LinkedIn. They're there for business to business opportunities, not to hear about your open house or the closing you just had. Anyone have any comments to prove me wrong on that? That's my feeling on LinkedIn. Anyone ever sold a house off a LinkedIn person? All right. Well, I'm still batting 1,000 on that. I don't see any reason you should be doing. I like LinkedIn. Everyone should have a professional profile, but it's not really where we need to be posting, advice and things like that in real estate. I would think. And you don't need to be on every social media platform. I talked about that. So 4 ways I'm going to kind of go over. We're going to set up referral sources with 0 minimal cost, meaning you pay nothing to be a part of it and you only pay on referrals. Okay. That's a really good thing. All of us should plug into them. I've been on a number of them over the years. Generally, I set them up for my teams that I had in the past, but I found a few that worked really well for me. So I still, I'll work a lead. If someone calls me and wants to sell a house, I'm going to have a conversation with them, even if I don't have a relationship, because I'm going to test them out. Is this convertible? Are you asking for the moon? And I don't think it would be a good fit for me to do that. Then I'll qualify them up front. I think open houses are still a really good opportunity. Think of open houses as like a Zillow lead that you meet in person. Okay. That's why I like open houses. I think they create a better opportunity to have a more realistic engagement and build some credibility. Building and managing your sphere of influence, that is my ultimate focus of where I point everyone to. I'm not going to do it obviously today, but I've got about a 4-hour training that I spend on how to build your sphere of influence and stay in front of them 40 touches a year. And then utilize social media. You guys need to post post on there. It's an easy, and I'm going to give you some easy tips to do. Everything I'm sharing today, you all can do today. Here's my list. I know a lot of you will probably want to copy and paste it. Some of them I actually think I stole from Sean. He's had this list of a lot of these before. It's basically referral sites. I'll give you some feedback on a few. I've used Clever, and I've closed last year. I think I closed three listings off Clever. That one worked really well for me last year. I've gotten some leads this year, but it just, and I know these things come and go. They realize they can't afford the quality of leads, so they cut back on it, and then you don't get leads anymore. But Clever was really good. I've gotten calls on my realtor.com profile. I mean, just because of my experience in selling houses. That's free. Ojo is another one that's been really good in the past. I think most of these sites are a little bit more dead now just because of the market. I had another one. I've gotten a lot of stuff on referral clouds, but they're pretty low quality. Lots of them, but just not as good. And then Homelight was really good about 4 or 5 years ago. Wow, it was amazing. They had a nice, clean user interface. You can have a team and add them all in there, and then they would keep populating them. Homelight's looking for you to use their other services. They have lending, they have title, they have other things. That's one of the things about Homelight is you got to kind of keep everything in house, but they give you a lot of at bats. So that's a good one. Anyone have one on here or feedback on this, or maybe another one that I haven't put on here?
Maybe homes.com.
I get rents. I get a number of people wanting to rent off homes.com. That feeds from the MLS, right? It goes into homes and it goes into a number of other sites. But that's a good one. And I've actually had even on homes I've listed, I've had homes.com opportunities too. Really think about making sure your profile is on those sites as well. I mean, we could keep adding to this, but homes.com would probably be a good one to put a profile on. Thank you, Andy. Anyone else?
I just posted from our Freedom Team support site that Andy helped put together. I think there's like 15 or something free sites right there. I just put the link in the chat.
Good. Guys, do that. Go through them, sign up for them, sign up for all of them if you can. Just every day, sign up for a new one, and then just get in their rotation, and you'll find some will give you, some opportunities. But you're only paying, generally 25 to 35% on each one you close, which is fine. I mean, if you can make 50% on a deal that you spent nothing to get on a person you had no other connection with, it's a closing, and it creates a future opportunity for you to impress them for the future. I can't tell you how many I've closed on relationships that I did not have. And because I did good job for them, they now became a good opportunity for me in the future. So I would definitely take a shot at them. Open houses, I mentioned this before. It's a free lead source, right, to add in your pipeline. It's a Zillow lead I meet in person. That's kind of the way I think about open houses. The thing, if you ever try to do the Zillow conversion stuff, all the training always points to the same thing. Don't ask them a bunch of questions, just meet them at a house. Well, this is starting at a house that you meet them at, and they're coming to see you. So the conversation about real estate is real easy. It's inevitable. We're here for the same reason. We're going to have a real estate conversation, and that's really advances, your conversation with them really fast. So I really like that. It creates those opportunities. And they do attract a lot of maybe buyers. So, but they may have never come by otherwise. Okay. It's at least a chance to make that impression for future follow-up. And I used to say this when I was really training a lot of new agents. I don't do as much of that anymore, but when I did, I would say you should do open houses until you can't do open houses. Don't do 2 hours on a Saturday. Do 6 hours, 2 houses on a Saturday, 6 hours, 2 houses on Sunday, until you can't do them because the buyers need to look at houses on the weekend. So I can't block off the schedule with open houses. My mom joined me about 7 years ago. It was right before I came to EXP, and she joined my brokerage, and then she moved over with me. And I told her the same thing, and she listened to everything. It's funny thing about the law of familiarity. My mom does everything the way I do. She listened until she doesn't, right? It's like we get too close, and I know if I give her advice, she won't take my advice anymore. And that's okay. I know that, and I don't take it personal. But I told her you should be doing open houses until you can. That's what she did. She did open houses every Saturday and Sunday for like the first 3 months. And then she ended up with like 7, 8 buyers, and she couldn't do open houses. And she'd be like, I can't do open houses anymore. I got too many buyers. I said, that's a good problem. I'm still going to ask you anyway. So that's a good rule of thumb to think about, and I think Brent Gove used to say, if you're not doing like 12 hours of open houses on the weekend, you're not employed, right? I mean, you got to be intentional and making it your business. 5 things, open houses. I'm going to give you the fast and dirty on the open house training. 5 things real estate agents that say to kill a relationship. Have you been pre-qualified? Have y'all heard this before? Okay. These are things, if you ask them, you're sizing them up. Let me see if I even want to talk to you, right? It comes off, it's very off-putting. Are you working with a realtor? I never ask that because I'm going to force them to have to lie to me or, or force them to engage me beyond just having a conversation about the house. I never ask. And to be honest, the chances of them having a buyer rep and showing up in that open house is almost zero. Okay. You have to have this mindset. I know that they don't have, and everyone has a realtor. Everyone knows a friend or a family member, someone that they can call, so that the answer is almost always yes. I don't ask. Because to me, I'm going to add so much value, you're going to forget you at a realtor. That's the way my mindset is when I do these and I have conversations. I never ask. And I never ask, if they've been pre-qualified. To me, you showed up at this house, so I'm going to assume you're qualified until you prove you're not. And I have a philosophy. I work as hard as you do, and I do this for anything and everything that I do. If I'm teaching or training someone, or if I'm working with a buyer and I haven't seen a pre-qual letter yet, say no problem. The first one's free, right? We're going to go look at a house. But beyond that, I need you to do some work. Okay. And you doing work would be provide me that you're qualified, so that way we can properly make offers, right? And I always have kind of that program. I'm going to keep working hard for you, but sometimes you got to ask for them to give something, to meet your effort. Do you have a time frame? Again, you're sizing them up. When are you looking to buy? You're sizing them up. Do you have a home to sell before you can buy? And what is your budget? Okay. I get rid of all this language. We're not trying to qualify them for that purpose. The only thing I want from them, and I told you this in the very beginning, is I want primarily one thing. If I can't, I'll get all 3 things. Do you remember the 3 things I want from every conversation from someone new, especially an open house?
Name, email, and phone number.
Man, Andy, you're going to get an A on this paper. It's exactly right. So my conversations and the way I talk to them is going to get me to the point where I can get that. Okay. If I can't get that, then I'm probably not building a relationship with them, and that's okay. But if you can get that, then they're going to be getting some touches from you going forward. 5 things real estate agents say to build relationship. Something exciting. I always have a liner to open up and break the ice. Usually the easiest one I always say is, how did you find the best home in the neighborhood when they walk in? And not in front of them. I'll say, hey, how are you going? And then I'll feel them out a little bit if they're going to engage you or not. But that's usually how I break the ice. This one is, hi, thank you for so much for stopping by. I can't wait to show you how wonderful this home is. We're going to highlight things that are good about it. Of course, we're not chasing them around, but we want to focus on the positive and the upside of it. Are you familiar with the neighborhood? You're going to have to establish yourself as the neighborhood expert. That adds value. Have you been to that hamburger place over there? Have you done this? Or no, there's a park on the other side of the neighborhood that's connected to the neighborhood most people miss. Things that show that you're in real estate and real estate. One of my favorite things about the neighborhood is what's yours. And then if you have trouble connecting with people, because not everyone is born with the natural ability to connect with others, the Ford method is a really good way. Everyone wants to talk about themselves, right? This is a way we can go through that. Family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. If we can get, 2 or 3 of those things, we can usually break the ice enough for them to engage and give us why they're here. What are they looking for? They're going to bring it out for us. Let's understand them better. I'm going to repeat it like over and over again. Our goal is to add at least 1 contact every open house. You got to have purpose. You got to have a direction. So I don't use sign-in sheets. I don't use apps. I want to build a relationship with someone by having a conversation and connecting with them. And the way I do that is I'm going to listen. I'm going to understand them. And then at some point, I'm going to hear what they're generally there because they want something about a house that they're maybe looking in 6 months. No problem. What would you take away from this house? Or what could we add to this house to make it work for you? Okay. Because the open house they come to, 95% chance they're not buying that house. We all know this. It's about connecting and building a future opportunity, right? So I would say something like, would you mind if I take a few notes regarding your feedback and share the notes back with you so I understand what you are looking for? I put they, but what you are looking for. And you say this in such a way like this. I mean, I'm telling you, 9 out of 10 times, they'll say, yeah, no problem. So in order for me to give them that text back, they got to give me a phone number. And I'll have the notes written and I'll say, what's your phone number so I can send this to you? Again, I never have pushback on this. And then let them know I'm going to give you the details on the home later. So there's this follow-up and they know they're going to get a text from you. Once you've done that, you now have permission to interact with them. Okay. I'm going to give you another really, really powerful tool. If you have someone, how often do we have someone that says, hey, my sister's looking for a house, right? We have this happen. And we say, great, have them call me. Never, ever, ever do that. I want to control that opportunity. I don't need to wait for them to call me because the chances are almost none that they're going to call you. I get a referral on average every day of the week, business day of the week. We'll call it about 25 referrals a month. Okay. And I do that because I've been very, very intentional about who I communicate with and done. Now, it doesn't close 25 transactions because you got to qualify them all out. Nope. And most of them aren't ready to buy tomorrow. But I close generally between 6 and 8, as many as 10 transactions a month. So the conversions are really high. I do convert quite a few of them, from prior months because they take time. If you have someone that says, I know someone that wants to buy a house, the very first thing I said, would you mind doing a group text with that person and make an introduction? And I do that specifically. Anyone know why I would want to do a group text on a referral?
What gives you a warm transition? I mean, so you don't feel like, you're not a stranger at that point.
It does break the ice. But the number one thing it does is it gives permission for us to reach out to each other, and it also gives accountability. Okay. What does that mean? I text. I just had this happen the other day. I've got a guy, he's closing on 1,000 transactions. Okay. He sells a ton of houses. And I want to do a podcast interview with him. The guy that's connecting me is an insurance agent. He's my sponsor. He sponsors my podcast. And he did an email. And I said, that's fine, but you mind doing a cell phone text introduction? And so he came back and did that the next day. And then when he did that, now I can say, hey, James, really good to meet you. Is there a time I can reach out today? Right. And if he doesn't respond, the other one is on the call on that text. And now there's some accountability. Now the guy's going to feel bad. I mean, this guy just handed me a guy to talk to and I didn't even call him back, because he wants to save face and look good for the referral. So it creates accountability and gives permission for us to talk to each other. That is probably one of the most strongest things that I've ever done as far as learning how to make that a part of every time I do referrals. Any questions on open houses or doing cold, or not cold, but referrals from, people? Group text is the most powerful tool. I'm telling you, I've done it thousands of times. I mean, I've made it ingrained in everything that I do. So why would we want to do all this work to start building this database for a sphere of influence? Why do we want to build a referral-based business? Well, for one, this one bucket will create 40 plus closings a year. And there's math that goes along with why it works and how it works, and specifically what you need to do in order to achieve that. It costs almost nothing. I have some help programs that I use to manage my contacts more effectively than using the Apple contact program. I use something called Contact Plus. I think it follows in this presentation, so I'll probably flip it open in a minute. And you only work with people you know, like, and trust, right? That's obviously a core thing. 10% of your database moves every year. Have you ever heard that before? You got to stay in front of them. You got to stay top of mind. If 10% of your database, and your database has, 300 people in it, that's 30 people are going to buy, sell during the year, every year. So you want to make sure they remember you. You can still niche. I think everyone should niche. This is a failure for me, is I've gotten used to selling houses all over Dallas Fort Worth that I never nailed down a niche outside of maybe investors. I don't do specifically first time home buyers. I don't do I mean, I do them, but I never niched on it. You can create a niche. You can create a email address. You can create a website. You can create a Facebook group, whatever, and niching all day, and you're still going to get referrals that ask you if you can help. You're not going to lose the opportunity for referrals. People get this hyper focus. If I specialize in VA and veterans, that I won't get luxury market. Well, if the market was there and you had the referral, you're still going to get it. But when you can really hyper connect with people that are unfamiliar with you by niching, it makes the conversion really, really easy. Andy knows that he gets calls from people because they're comfortable with him and his team because of all of his YouTube videos. It becomes very organic. When they call, they're like, wow, I'm talking to the guy doing the video. Wow. Then just like this instant connection. If you're a veteran and I specialize in veteran loans, you're going to connect with me because I'm here to help you. And it's an easier conversion. You don't have to go shop around for random agents that don't specialize in veteran loans. It's just something I think everyone should do, right? We've heard that before. Riches are in the niches. I think everyone should still niche. And this is built for a career. I mentioned in the beginning, if I'm cold calling every single day or door knocking every day, it's a really hard thing to do that for 10 or 15 or 20 years. But this right here, if people are just calling you because you've been intentional about staying in front of your sphere, you've got a career, and you can decide when you want to work and when you don't. I've told people before, I don't work weekends and evenings, and I did that for a long time until the market got tighter on the transaction count. Now I work. I gotta work weekends and evenings right now, but for a long time I didn't, and I think there's a value add because I work with people. I choose who I work with. All right, so building it, the math is, and this comes from a book by a guy named Brian Eisenhower. There's very little information about how to manage your sphere of influence. It's all about how to grow it and add to it, but no one really spends the time on how to effectively manage it and stay in front of your sphere. Okay, so I really took the time to find out, why do people that know, like, and trust me not call me? And I realized that I'm not top of mind with most of them. So I started this about 2.5 years ago. I started on my road I read the books, and outside of the Millionaire Agent, there wasn't a whole lot of context for real estate agents specifically about sphere of influence and how to manage it and collect it and grow it, and how to stay in front of them. There wasn't much material on it. Brian spent a lot of time researching and looking at the relationship between staying in front of your group of people and how it affected you moving forward. And he found if you could touch them 40 times a year on 100 people, you'll get 7 referrals. I'm going to give you some cheat sheets on this. When I talk about 100 people, the term I'm using is going to be primary, and primary are generally people that know you by first name, you know them by first name. That's a great place to start. So if you're wrapping your brain around it and you're going through your phone and you're like, well, how do I define who belongs in the group? I got up to about 600-700 people in my primary, and then I realized that it was too many. So I've actually stripped it all the way back down to like 60. Okay, I'm telling you what I did, and I stripped it down to 60, and now I'm very intentional about rotating those people that I meet with. I'll do coffee with someone once a week. I started adding these type of things into my system, but I can't do 700 people. I can't ever have coffee with everyone. So I made it so I could connect with the core people, because they're going to refer all of my business. You got to start with your phone contacts. And what I did is, let's see if I get Contact Plus to open. Anybody heard of Contact Plus? Okay. It's a way of managing your database. You can definitely use Apple and stuff like that. Jim, did you have a comment?
I just said just now, just now
right.
hearing about it.
So you go way back, 3 minutes ago. All right. So this one is every time I meet or connect with someone, I put them in here. Like Chris Dord is a guy that just listed a house that we put an offer on and we won. So what did I collect? Well, you know what? Here, I'm missing. So I don't even have his email address. I thought I did. I don't have his email address. I need to add that in there. And my assistant actually goes through and checks all this and tells me what I'm missing. But I have him tagged as an agent. James, that's the one I talked about earlier. James is the one that's closing in on 1,000 transactions. I've got agent tagged. I've got his phone number and I've got his email. I do this for agents too. You know, for any of you in the builder model, you know, there's ways that you can collect all that information, and I can actually run it in my system by just agents. Shrunk down a little bit. There it is. I have 1,600 agents in my database, and this all connects with my phone. All of it's live. Okay. This is just an easier way to manage it. I have 1,600 agents that I can stay in contact with, and I send them all newsletters, and I do other things to stay in contact with everyone. You do this for buyers and sellers too. So let's see what I have on my primary. Drop agent, put primary. I told you I had 60. I have 67 in my primary, and this is me stripping it down. I want to know that I have a relationship with them. They will call me for real estate where they would think of me first. I've done lots of transactions with them. You know, there's a reason that they belong in this space. And then secondary are people that you know of, they know of you, but they may not think of you first. And then I started putting them all in my secondary contacts. I have 1,397 of those. Okay. I send a newsletter to everyone in my primary and secondary anyway. I still stay in front of them, but I know my conversion rate is going to be a lot harder on the secondary than it is the primary. Okay. Any questions on Contact Plus?
Yeah, Sean, are you sending the letters through this application?
No.
Okay.
This is a management of my contacts. This is
Gotcha.
effectively my CRM, but it doesn't have, you know, it doesn't track when I keep up with them. It doesn't do any of that. It's a place where I store all of them, I tag them, and I have them, you know, I can easily, my assistant, she actually says, okay, I want to send out the newsletter. So she goes over there and she tags primary and secondary, and then she exports them separately. She exports the primary, she exports the secondary, and then she sends out the newsletter. I use BombBomb.
Okay. All right.
I do use that because it's really good for sending. I like videos. I do a lot of videos, video content. So I send out video content all the time, and BombBomb's good at that. So that's why I chose to use that one for my newsletters. I use Keeping Current Matters for my newsletter content. It took me a long time. I waited 6 months to send out my first newsletter. Don't do that. Once you get your list and you've got 50 to 100 people primary, go ahead and get a newsletter going. It's okay if it's not perfect or totally reflective of you. Just get something going. And I should have never waited that long. You know, but and the cool thing about BombBomb and Keeping Current Matters, it lets me create a video that I can send on every newsletter. So I have something organic in there.
Do you send a generic video to everyone so it's the same video?
It is, but it would be something like, I'm going to give you 3 ways you're going to win fighting your taxes this year.
Cool.
They're going to listen. You know, your open rate, if you do it right and you address it right, it's good for any buyer or seller or anyone in your primary contact. Like, they would value that and appreciate it. Or it might be, you know, there's so much market activity. I could talk about markets all day. You know, what's going on in the market now? There's no transactions happening. Is this the time to sell or buy? Well, if interest rates drop into 5%, then expect a run, you know, because people are sitting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And there's pent up demand going, but nobody's doing anything. So I might do a video and said, you know, be ready. This is coming. And you can get ChatGPT to give you plenty of content, you know, that if you can't think of it. Or you can get on one of my YouTube channels. I've got tons and tons of content, you know, on things that buyers and sellers will appreciate. And anyone can steal anything I'm doing. I don't care. I share everything. I know if I give you everything I'm doing, no one's going to be me, and I'm not going to be you. So, you know, I might as well just share it all. All right, let me keep going because I am running out of time. We talked about I build up my sphere in 4 categories: primary, secondary, other, and agent. You know, a lot of you don't care about tracking agents. Fine. I put other are like doctors, you know, I get allergy shots. Probably don't need to put her on my, you know, my newsletter, but I need her phone number in my phone. So I have other as another option. All right, social media tips. I'm going to give you the things a lot of you know. You need to stay focused, and your primary should all be on all of your social media. Find them, connect with them, stay in front of them. These are also cheap ways to stay in front of them. I prefer the 80-20 on personal versus real estate. I want people to like me, and I'll just dab in some real estate in there so they know I'm in real estate. But I want them to engage and like me for, my clips with my kids, right? Or things that I like to do. I like grilling, and I talk about things that I do in the grilling. So I always like that. And then make sure you're interacting with your audience. Like are like high fives, right? Have you ever heard that before? Likes are high fives. Comments are digital hugs. When you're commenting other people's content regularly, you stay engaged. They recognize you. I remember people commenting on my stuff. I just remember them. I think about even on my stuff I create. And I did have to spend time purging because it's such a politically active area out there. We have people that are just so hypersensitive one way or the other. I had to start purging some of them. I don't need all the negative stuff. Let's have good dialogue. We don't have to be extreme about things. So I've purged a lot of my social media stuff too, and who I really want to interact with. Last thing I'm going to share is I do have two things. I'll just show you real quick, and then I'll bring it back to it. I have Real Estate Success DFW is my Facebook group, and it's primarily building community and stuff like that. But I have all my videos and a lot of the stuff there. So I've got over 800 members there. 95% of them are agents. I'm looking to continue to grow that space. And then this is the thing I'm really focused on is my actual podcast. So if you guys wouldn't mind, subscribe to this. This is where I'm interviewing other agents that are really successful in this space. Like this is Josh Harley here. He's the founder of Fathom. He's got the 9th largest brokerage in the U.S. I sat down with him. Kristen, just like Andy, her whole business is YouTube. Like she has built her entire business on YouTube and how she built it doing that. And she sells a ton of real estate, and she only works with people generally from YouTube. I did the interview with Jeff Morrell a couple weeks ago. So I had him jump on with me. Anyway, a lot of good interviews. I recommend jumping in there, subscribing to that. I'm going to put it back on. Any questions or anything before we jump off? It's already 11.
Yeah, thanks a lot, buddy. I appreciate you hanging out with us this morning. Great info. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Andy, for having me on. I know Jeff asked me about doing it. I do these probably once or twice a year. I'll do this for the Freedom Team. So some of you may have seen me before. I've taught on different things like how to manage your taxes. That's something that no one talks about, how to maximize your tax deductions. I do open house training. And then I've done some sphere of influence, more intense training on some of these as well. So I'll keep adding to and keep doing whatever I can to help you guys.
Thanks, Sean.
Anyone? Michael, you had something, Michael?
No, I was just saying great stuff. Appreciate it. You need to get in that probate market, especially where you are.
Which market?
Your market. You need to get in that probate market with all those people that are moving on.
We should all see the writing on the wall, right? The heavy emphasis on the baby boomers going to be retiring. There's all kinds of things that are going to come from that. Certainly, a lot of them are going to be dying off, but a lot of that transition space is a really big opportunity. Absolutely. I'm actually doing one in Indianapolis.
There you go.
If y'all have real estate challenges or a house you don't know what to do with, you can call me. I've sold houses all over the U.S. I solve real estate problems in general. That's one of my gifts.
Awesome. Well, Sean, thank you, buddy. This was great information. And I think that's going to do it for today. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow at the same time on the same link for Connect to Collaborate. That's where we come together and talk and try to solve problems for each other. And then Thursday, you can tune in the same time, same Zoom link to ask questions for Eric. Eric will, for Age of Attraction. And so that's going to about do it for today, unless anybody has any other questions. Anybody got anything before we go?
That was very insightful, Sean. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you,
for all
Samantha.
your help. You're welcome.
Eric is actually the one that brought me in, just so you know. It was Sean Sturrock brought Eric in, and Eric brought me into EXP. He made the introduction. Johnson, did you have something? Okay, we missed him. All right, well, I'm good. If you're good, let's close it up.
I'm good. You got anything, Sean?
Yeah.
I got
Good.
lots
You,
of
Sean.
stuff.
Appreciate it.
Not as much as Sean though.
Yeah, yeah. All right, buddy. Well, thank y'all, and tune in tomorrow, 10 o'clock, same Zoom link.